Hello, thank you for joining us at Peace Through Action USA. If this is your first time with us, our mission is to achieve peace between people and within communities in the United States by promoting caring action. We activate and equip Americans to implement practical, peaceful solutions to aggression and violence in their communities and our country. Our mission activities contribute to the advancement of a nation abundant with peaceful people, applying peaceful practices and creating peaceful places. One of the ways we achieve this is through our featured Peacebuilders initiative, which is an expression of our belief that all of us can be peace builders. Very few of us will reach the heights of Gandhi, Martin Luther King, or Desmond Tutu, but each of us can do something for peace. Today, our featured Peacebuilder is Julie Lillie, a peace and justice educator and co-founder of the Peacepad. Julie is dedicated to creating peaceful people and projects and believes peace and justice is for everyone. Peace and justice education, in particular, at every age and stage of life. We're happy to have you with us, Julie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
To get us started, I'm curious if you could just tell us a little more about the Peacepad, what it is, and how you would just describe the work.
Yeah, let me tell you how it came to be. About a year and a half ago, my background is in education from pre-K through college. And I decided to shift from the school setting and move into some freelance work. I really wanted to focus on peace and justice education and social emotional learning. And right when I did this, a colleague I hadn't really connected with for years reached out and ultimately is a partner with me at the Peacepad, and that's Dr. Carrie Seeley. And she's a principal and peace educator as well. And through our collaboration, before the Peacepad, actually decided that there's just a real gap in peace and justice education at the elementary level. And that's sort of our shared background and really an emphasis in literacy and language. And as Toni Morrison says, paraphrasing here, but if there's not the book that you want to see in the world, then you write it. And we really took that to heart and said, we want something that for elementary that focuses on peace and justice education, but that isn't just about theory and really moves theory into action. So we're very focused on a framework. And this framework, which are 5 peace actions, is then kind of the catalyst for founding the Peacepad. And these 5 peace actions were created by an organization based out of Minnesota called World Citizen Peace, who we're great friends and partners with. And the 5 peace actions really inform all of the framework for our book, as well as everything that we do at the Peacepad. So those 5 are seek peace within yourself and others, reach out in service, respect diversity, protect our environment, and be a responsible citizen of the world. So everything that we do really aligns to that. And the Peacepad has really a very new endeavor then as a result of kind of the book starting first. But our goal, as you shared, is to bring peace and justice education to all ages and stages of life. So absolutely an emphasis with learners and students, but also with adults. And in particular, for example, do a lot of workshops around seek peace within yourself and others and different strategies that I'll share a little bit more about, I'm sure, as we go today. But the goal of having to bring peace and justice education to a wider audience, basically in sort of this mainstreaming idea where as peace and education historically has been more focused in a little bit in secondary schools, but primarily in graduate and undergraduate programs that are very specific in that area. So that's what really drives us to found the Peace Pad and to be writing this book about peace education.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think the 5 peace actions are great and are really accessible, I think, for people to latch onto and maybe think about in application to their own lives. I'm curious if there's one that really speaks to you or resonates with you the most that maybe you employ in your personal life.
Ooh, hard to narrow in. But you're totally right that that's actually what just really excites me about the peace actions is the universality of them. And when we think about kind of gelocalization of learning, so what is my local context, me, my community, my school, my family, but then also how that's interconnected with the world at large. So I think that's kind of the emphasis within being a responsible citizen is doesn't mean you have to be involved and know everything about what's happening in the world, but that you honor the interconnectedness that we all share. One that in my personal life, and I think that's really foundational, is I would kind of split up the peace action, seek peace within yourself and others. And in our work, we really emphasize that inner peace and self-awareness and deepening that inner work is the foundation for then having justice and peace in our relationships, in our communities, and out through those different levels of humanity. So I think for me, both in my personal healing journey as well as supporting other folks interested in this field, is really emphasizing that relationship with self and that peace starts within, just as conflict starts within before it moves into our externalized world.
Yeah, I think that resonates for me. I think for one reason, because when we think about peace, a lot of people have this image of the individual meditation or the individual practice of yoga, or just kind of these ways of achieving peace that really center on what we as one person can do, less so with others, but to achieve this kind of personal enlightenment or what have you, right? But I think that you're very intentional about tacking on this word justice when you talk about peace education. And I think, it was Grace Lee Boggs who said, transform yourselves to transform the world. So I'm curious if you could say more about, why that and justice aspect is important to you.
Yeah. And first, just honoring absolutely that inner work being that foundation, and that there are a lot of different ways to seek peace within. I mean, one of my partners is with the International Association of Human Values and Cities for Peace, and we really focus more on leadership capacity through that meditation and breath work. But seeking peace within can be like going for a walk. The environment is huge for me for my own sense of peace and being in nature. So absolutely. And going to your question about that intersection with justice, yeah, we were very intentional of adding and really specifying the relationship between peace and justice. MLK certainly spoke at many others of that relationship between no justice, no peace. If there's peace, there's justice. And sometimes that seems to kind of roll away in some peace work where we kind of accept like, well, if there's negative peace, whether it's a ceasefire or that there are, some capacity of peacefulness occurring, but if it's not positive peace, meaning that we've really addressed and dug in and done the really hard work to discover the root causes, to de-escalate, but then to collaborate and come together, that isn't going to be sustainable in the long term. And so going back to the inner peace, that's where we can sustain more of this work that's really hard and really challenging around justice related issues or injustice, because now we have our own capacity to build to weather the storm, so to speak, of navigating those challenges. So at the learner level, being able to really lift that, and like in our book, we really guide elementary educators. So with our youngest learners, in having conversations related to the peace actions and what injustices exist. And I mean, it could be as simple, as something happening at school with there isn't recycling here, and therefore all of this is happening, or where, people are trashing the environment on our playground. But if we don't start intentionally using that language of harm, injustice, aggression, then it's always going to be this thing that like, okay, I know I'm not supposed to be there, but I don't know how to really engage in it critically, and also to peacefully problem solve within that paradigm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really rich. And I'm curious to hear too, like how you've seen some of the impacts of these ideas, either individually or collectively with people that you've shared this work with in the 15 years or so that I know you've been involved in this kind of work.
Yeah, gosh, the first example that's coming forward is I was teaching very close to where George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis. And it was during distance learning already at that point, with COVID happening. And I was working with a group of fourth and fifth graders. And I mean, before his murder, and then of course after, there were a lot of conversations that, one, we needed to have, and two, that students needed not just like a safe space, but a brave space. And like Britt Hawthorne, Dadir Sylvan are some people who influence our perspective on this balance. But a safe place, generally speaking, of like, everybody's kind of has this degree of psychological safety, but it's safety from whose lens? And oftentimes that's from perhaps a more, white dominant, or if there's power elements in the room, then there's safety there, but not necessarily for other folks. And that same sense with learners of being able to then engage in, I have questions, I have concerns, and not be afraid that I'm going to say the wrong thing and, be canceled between my classmates, but that this is a place for us to dialogue. And having then, I think adults need these too, having scaffolded language to be able to have entry points into sharing perspectives, challenging others' opinions and beliefs, but doing that in a way that also maintains this, this space so that those conversations can occur. And and sometimes they might be productive, but other times they might be like, we've just raised a lot of things here that are going to continue on and build as we learn and grow. And one big element that I think is really important for all of us, but an emphasis within our book with elementary learners, is having flexibility in our thinking, that as we learn, as we grow, as we unlearn, as we have different experiences, that the ways that we think about the world, the ways that we interpret experiences, the biases that we have, that those can and will change and grow. And so if we have an open mindset of that from our youngest years, imagine the potential change and capacity for both justice and peace within our adult spaces as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like there was sort of a shift that happened. I mean, for you personally as well, when you were witnessing what was occurring in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd, and reckoning with these questions of how do we respond to this moment in a way that recognizes the needs of the students, and recognizes the needs of our society in this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the peace action respect diversity is really from sort of that deconstruction of also celebrating diversity, but being aware of our biases, or for for education, how are we ensuring that there's multiple perspectives from different people whose voices here, whose voices not being brought into the space, and asking those things critically, and doing that with our younger learners, so that that is skills and attitudes and values of how they move then throughout the remaining of their schooling and into the world as adults.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's absolutely a recognition there that what gets taught when we're young can stick with us for quite some time thereafter into adulthood, right? And it's really
Mhm.
important to address those things early on.
Yeah, and peace education is most definitely not about this is the ideology and you follow it. It's about us being able to ask questions, challenge things, look at different perspectives, seek out different perspectives, and then to synthesize and sort of analyze that through our own epistemology, through our own knowledge systems, through our own ways of looking at the world from our limited lens of experience. And so I think that's also why it's so important that this work, really meaningfully begins. It's like, that's who we are as humans. And, that humanistic whole person perspective, putting that as the primary in our educational systems, uh, helps move us out of the industrial era age of education and sort of getting us to point A, point B, but like really pulling back and looking at how do we want our world to be, and how as humans, and how technology of course will and has already changed that, and how do we want to really transform then not just our inner work, but then at these different levels of humanity through culture, through national, and then onto the global level.
Well, this has been, yeah, a really robust and great conversation, and I appreciate, you taking the time to map out what this looks like. And I'm curious if you have any words of advice for any formal or non-formal educators out there who might want to employ more peace education into their work.
Yeah, and I would say this goes for anyone. We're all, adults are intersecting with kids. Even if you don't have children, you're intersecting. And so I think again, that's why peace education and like the peace pad and the consulting work is really focused on all ages. And as my advice, it goes back to making sure that you're prioritizing also your inner work as part of that, that is your foundation in which then you can support others, whether that's your family or you're as an educator or an auntie, but that we kind of have that as I give myself permission and I honor my needs, as well as I'm reflective and aware of whether it's looking at our biases and things like that. So I'll mention too that we do have a lot of resources on the PeacePads website for so there's some lesson plans that are great for pretty much all ages, as well as digital slides. And then for adults, for each peace action, we have a like a guided video that is about 10-15 minutes long that can really help you process through your relationship with the 5 peace actions through somewhat of a narrow lens, but getting some things started for you as you consider your relationship with peace and justice education and the world ultimately.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. And thank you for sharing. We'll absolutely be linking to the Peacepad as we develop out a webpage with this wonderful interview being featured there. So thank you for the time today, Julie. It was a pleasure getting to speak to you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.